You are listening to the On Purpose Podcast, your guide to living a more purposeful life. Welcome, everybody, to episode 188 of the On Purpose Podcast. As always, I'm humbled to have you here with me today, and I'm so grateful you give me this space in your life. And as I sit back and record this episode, I always like to just think of how this show has grown from our humble beginnings in March of 2019 to where we are now. And I can't do it without all of you, so I'm so thankful. A lot of you ask, how can I share? How can I support? How do I help you on this journey? And a couple ways you can do that. You can like, share, and review the podcast on whatever app you like to listen: iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Cast, wherever it is you get your podcast. Give us some love on the apps there. And then the other way is you can join us over on patreon.com, where your financial contributions help push us to our goal of being the most impactful podcast in the world. And I think that's a big goal, but I like big goals and I like shooting for the stars. I don't want to be the biggest in terms of numbers or check marks or any of that. I mean, that's all great. But I want to be known as the most impactful, that when you come and listen to our show, you're going to get better for that week. You're going to be challenged in your thought processes. You're going to be excited. You're going to be inspired. You're going to be accountable to yourself if you know you're not doing the work you're supposed to be doing. So if that sounds great, join us on patreon.com/the On Purpose Podcast, and your financial contribution helps continue to push us to our goal of being the most impactful podcast in the world. All right, team, this week something a little different. I'm recording at night here in the U.S. because my guest is joining us all the way from Australia. Tony Pisanelli is an author and went from a disgruntled, unsatisfied accountant to now being one of the largest career coaches in Australia. And he's authored a book called The Phoenix Career Principles. And he talks about merging your livelihood with the purpose in your life. So sit back, listen, get a few laughs in, and I hope you enjoy this week's conversation with Tony Pisanelli. Tony, welcome to the On Purpose Podcast, and thank you, my friend, for showing up for our community. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to share my message with your audience.
I love it. And I will tell you, Tony, this is a first, I do believe, in the On Purpose Podcast for almost 4-year history. Now, usually I'm a big morning guy, and I like to record with a good cup of coffee and my breakfast and high, my creative times in the morning. But since you are around the world, you get to record during the morning, and I'm up in the evening.
Yes, thank you for allowing that to happen this way. Yes, because I wanted to be fully present for your audience, and I know I've been asked at the middle of the night, my time, to appear on certain shows, and I thought, look, I wouldn't be doing justice to myself or to the people on the other side who were listening. So
I love it.
This was the best way to go.
No, I appreciate it. And it was kind of exciting. I was telling my wife, I was like, well, maybe I can just have a little glass of whiskey while I do an evening podcast instead of a cup of coffee in the morning.
Yes.
So
well, let's see how this goes, and then we'll know whether this works.
No, it's fantastic. And it's an honor to have you on the show. And I can't wait to dive into some of the work you're doing, Tony. As I prepared for this podcast, there's a lot of similarities in what we're doing with the On Purpose podcast community, and getting people to not only identify the purpose in their life, but to live within it and to push it forward. And then, almost importantly, is to share their purposeful message with others to inspire them to do the same. And you're doing a lot of that formally through work and your new book, The Phoenix Career Principles, and really pushing people to tie purpose to their livelihoods.
Correct. Yes, and that sort of emanated from my own career journey, Jerrod, where very early on, I, like many others, our career was really nothing more than just a mechanism to earn an income. And then I learned through going through stages of dissatisfaction that the career needs to be so much more. And I clued into that message working alongside a fellow colleague. We started off as accounting graduates working for a large Australian corporation doing accounting work. And after 2 or 3 years, I really started to struggle with the monotonous routine of doing the same thing every month. So the first week we do this, and then the next week it would lead to that. And the third week would be the following, and then the fourth week would be something else. And then the next month would start again. It was just repeat the cycle. And I thought, I'm not going to. I remember going for walks and parks at lunchtime in the city thinking, I'm not going to do this for 35, 40 years of my life.
Right.
It's going to destroy me.
Yeah.
So one day I had a conversation with the work colleague by the name of Perry, because he did exactly, Jerrod, the same work I did.
Right.
Yet he was engaged, he was energized, enthusiastic, and I thought, what is this? Am I missing something? And the difference, and this was where it painted the contrast between what I was about and what he was about. He loved accounting work because he, just going back to his boyhood story, he took me back to his childhood. He grew up on a farm and his parents grew wheat.
Yeah.
And in Australia, you'd have good harvests and poor harvests. And his parents needed to learn how to save money from the good harvests so that if the next year was a bad harvest, they would see that period through and not experience financial hardship.
Sure.
And he also witnessed how some of the neighbouring farmers didn't do that. In the good harvest, they took their money and went off and spent it, and then they had to really struggle through the bad years.
Yeah.
So that became an important life lesson for him, and that became his motivation for becoming an accountant and doing the work he did.
All right.
Each day. But then, Jerrod, he did something else. He also had a vision of one day opening his own financial planning practice. So he spent 10 years in this corporation, navigating into different parts of the company, learning financial planning, budgeting, taxation, cost-benefit analysis, learning as much around the financial discipline as he could to serve his long-term vision, his 10-year vision of owning his own practice. Whereas little Tony was running around just doing work to earn an income.
Sure. All right, Tony,
Okay.
I'm gonna stop you there for a second. That's a great story, and I love this story, but I didn't get to warm you up, Tony. You got right into the heavy lifting of the podcast. And
All right. Okay.
yeah. No, I got to warm you up, and the audience is going to want to know more on that story. But first, I got to let them know a little more about Tony, and I'd like to warm you up with a series of questions, Tony. And the first one is, you are stranded on a deserted island for the rest of your life, Tony. You get one food. What is it you're going to eat every day for the rest of your life?
I would say banana.
A
Bananas.
a banana.
Yes.
You gonna take any peanut butter or anything to spice it up, or just straight bananas?
Well, you did say only one food. So they're nourishing and they're filling.
All right, yeah, no, that's good. And you could, if there's any monkeys on your island, you're gonna have a lot of friends.
Yes.
All right, Tony. Next question for you. You get a superpower. It can be one of our superheroes or something you make up yourself. What superpower would you like to have, and why would you like to have it?
The superpower I'd like to have is teaching. And why I want to have it is because people really appreciate and value someone who can take something that's very complex and simplify it.
Nice. What is your favorite book, Tony?
I would say one of my favourite books is a book called Mastery by a gentleman called Robert Greene.
Mastery, huh? What'd you take away from that book?
That all of life's experiences are an apprenticeship.
Well, that's a good analogy. Where
Yes,
life's experiences are basically one big training program.
exactly. And I know Richard Branson sees it pretty much the same way.
Yeah. Okay, Tony. You can have dinner with one person. That person can still be alive or may have passed. Who would it be and what would you want to ask them?
I would say Walt Disney.
Ooh, Walt Disney. That's a good one. What would you ask Walt?
What was his inspiration to build all the elements he built? So he started off with some cartoon characters, Jerrod, Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and all those. And then they became movies. And then that became Disneyland. What what was the inspiration behind all that? And what would be his message to others? I know he really valued the importance of sharing stories, and that was a theme through his life. So it would be a conversation around the importance of storytelling.
Wow, that would be good. Yeah, I can only imagine what kind of fascinating ideas he would have for you and stories.
Yeah, because it was interesting. I read a little bit about his biography, and um, he was working, or he's applied for a job somewhere, and they said, "No, you're not going to make it. You're not creative enough." So, of all the people you're going to tell you're not creative enough, Walt Disney, and was one of the greatest creative genius we've probably ever seen. So, it's interesting how people can misread us, and we shouldn't allow others to dictate our life, Jerrod.
For sure. That is such a we talk about that in many different episodes in many different ways to our community here is that no one else gets to decide who you can become.
Exactly, or what you do with your life.
Or right, exactly. So yeah. So it doesn't surprise me that Walt Disney would be told something like that and have to overcome it because I think almost all of us can think at some point in our life we had a dream or an idea or something we wanted to pursue and we were told by somebody that we couldn't do it or it would never happen or it was impossible. And it's up to us if we want to listen to that or not.
Well, yeah, in speaking to a lot of people and reading their stories, Jerrod, I've identified that almost everyone has two types of people in their life. The first person truly believes in them and that they can do anything they want. That person gives you the confidence to go out in the world and achieve great things. The other type of person that we all have is someone who doesn't believe in us. And they give us the determination to prove them wrong.
Sure.
So people will say, I think Michael Jordan's father said of Michael, if you want Michael to go out and do something, tell him that he can't do it.
Right. Yeah. So
that'll fire him up.
Yeah, absolutely. What about this, Tony? Because we're both. It's clear to me you studied this purposeful life and topic, and you've looked at it from few different lenses. What about this here? Let me pose this question to you. What if the person that doesn't believe in you is you?
Then you will struggle.
Right. And how do we overcome that? How do we become the person that sees the possibility in ourselves? Right? Because just like you talked about the accountant colleague who was being an accountant because it helped his family farm find financial security. Right? So he believed that he could accomplish this. So how do you take clients or customers or people you come across that the biggest hurdle for them having the purposeful connection between their livelihood and living a life of passion isn't anybody outside of themselves? What would you tell them?
if they don't believe it in themselves, one element is they can hire a coach or a counsellor that will help them see it. And also, there was a famous American psychologist by the name of William James. And he said, deep down, a person knows that they're here to achieve a significant purpose.
Yeah.
But you've got to remove all the layers of self-doubt and non-belief and get down to what's truly in their heart. In the heart, if you connect a person to their heart, deep down they do know. And when someone says to me, for example, my life is insignificant, it has no purpose, I say to them, I share a story someone shared with me. It was one of my gardeners and landscapers. And he said, do you see those ants over there in my garden? He pointed to the ants. He goes, do you know how important they are to the ecosystem?
Right.
They aerate the soil. They kill pests, insects that can harm the plants. They help the decomposition of organic matter, so that it improves the health of the soil. So if a minute ant that most people consider is nothing more than an insect plays such an important purpose in terms of the environment and the health of the soil, you as a human being must have a purpose if you're walking this planet.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, there's go ahead, Tony.
So if an ant has, you must have, even on a grander scale.
Okay, so let's go back to the story you shared with us in the opening. So the farmer's son, who is an accountant colleague of yours, so you see the purpose and the passion. He's assigned to the same job that you're not enjoying.
Yes.
How did that make you feel? How did you take that and turn that into a positive for yourself?
Well, he loved his accounting work because it was connected to a boyhood story, whereas I was doing accounting work because my parents, who came out from Italy years earlier, wanted me to get a good education and work indoors as a professional, in a professional occupation, rather than like them being labourers,
right,
being exposed to the elements. So they led me down a pathway where get yourself a secure, well-paid professional job and you'll be set for life, not knowing anything about this element around purpose.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. So I was none the wiser either until I then started experiencing my working life and finding at a certain point there needed to be something more.
So after you talk to him and you hear his story, what were the next steps you took? What was it that you reflected to challenge yourself to start getting more out of your livelihood?
Well, then I realized I needed to do something with my career that connected me to a broader life purpose. And aside to my career, I had a deep passion for understanding personal development and how life worked, psychology and philosophy. So I studied a lot of those subjects. And I then decided, well, how can I turn my passion for these subjects into a purposeful path? And I was taking this knowledge and I began training and coaching the younger generation that was coming through the corporation. And I was taking them aside and I was coaching them and stressing the importance of it, that they needed to manage their career because the company wouldn't look after them.
Okay.
The company was going through a transformation or a downsizing phase, and they were shedding thousands, tens of thousands of employees, and they really didn't care about their people as much as they did about their profits and their shareholders.
Sure.
So I said, you need to start proactively managing your career and making sure that you're employable both within the organisation, if that's where you want to stay, or you build capability sets that gives you opportunities beyond the company. So I did that for myself. So I started I had developed risk management skills because I knew in the company they were highly valued, and it made it very important to get rid of me. So the secret, if you're someone who's listening to this and you want to stay employed with the company you're with because you enjoy it, it gives you a good income, and it allows you to fulfill your purpose. Large corporations serve the world in some shape or form. Make yourself, so this is the secret, make yourself more important to them than they are to you.
Sure.
Okay? So if you've got a skill set that they can't easily replace with technology, or they can't outsource it to another country, you are in a very strong position to hold your role in that company. And the second element is, if they do come along and tap you on the shoulder and say goodbye, make sure you've got a skill set that's employable in other fields. So I developed skills where I was coaching people within the organisation, but I knew I could take that when I was ready to work for myself as a coach in the career space, because I was helping those people in the company proactively manage their career for 2 points. One, they could lose their job. Secondly, they could become dissatisfied because it wasn't connected to their purpose or to who they were as a person.
Yeah, how do you do that? Talk to me about that. How does somebody find their purpose in their livelihood? Or how do you help them align that?
Well, typically they're already doing it in some shape or form, but don't realize that they can make a career path out of it. And it's something they're truly passionate about. So you can ask them, what is it in your life that you truly enjoy doing?
Right.
And it could be they enjoy playing computer games. Well, how can you earn an income from computer games? Well, maybe they've played 500 computer games and they could create their own. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And form a partnership with a technology service provider or something. So there's ways of taking what you love and turning it into an income. So mine was teaching, and I really was passionate about learning. And then that became a mechanism for me teaching and coaching, and that became my source of income. And then, as well as writing books and speaking on podcasts and different platforms. So what I typically do when I'm coaching people around their career is I take them back to their childhood and say, what was it in your childhood? So I met a gentleman a few years ago who became my gardener. And I asked him, because of my interest in career journeys, what was it that made you become a gardener / landscaper? And he said that in the backyard, the family owned a lime tree. There was a lime tree in the backyard, and it was struggling. It was almost on its last legs.
Okay.
And his father said to him, Dave, it's your job to nurture and take care of that tree so it doesn't die. So young Dave was only about 8 years of age at the time, would water it, would fertilise it, would take care of it, would protect it from the heat, all sorts of things, and it survived. And that became, and he got a lot of satisfaction at taking something that was on its last legs and bringing it back to life. That became his starting point for becoming his love of gardening and landscaping.
Yeah.
So I take them back to their some childhood activity that gave them great joy, and see where we can take that.
Yeah. And I think that's an important lesson, and I've done that in classes as well, is you very seldom get into a job or a career by accident. Right? Like most people go to school or they apply, they go through a process to get a position. It's like in your case, folks were in accounting. They didn't just stumble into that job. They just didn't get drug out of bed one day and be made an accountant. They had to study and go to school and have certain qualifications. And I think at times we just got to remind people of why they chose to be there to begin with. What was it that first interested you, and what was it that intrigued you enough to even apply and go through the process to be in this position?
Exactly. Yeah, you need to recount the steps. A lot of people don't connect their working life with enjoyment. They think the two need to be separate, Jerrod, and I don't agree.
Okay, so how do we connect them? How do you tie enjoyment to the working life?
Well, as I just said, find something you truly enjoy doing and are passionate about, and find how that can be turned something that serves others, that can help you generate an income. So young Dave took his love of plants and taking care of plants and turned that love into a gardening and landscaping career.
Yeah. What about this, Tony? What about getting them to understand or realize one of the things in Western culture that we struggle quite a bit with is this grind mentality, or this work, hustle mentality where we work so much and we put so much of our identity in being at work and being busy that we miss some of the best rewards of a good career is vacation and holiday and time off. But many times people don't want to take it because they feel like they should be at work. They put so much of their identity on work versus all the benefits that come with work. So that's one of the things I always tell people is, what good is it to have 240 hours of vacation saved up if you're miserable at work?
Well, yeah, you're taking a vacation to escape.
Right.
I mean, I can't remember who said this, but I think it was Robert Louis Stevenson said, my purpose is to unite my vocation with my avocation.
Yep.
In other words, that is one of the key secrets to a great purposeful career, is to merge your working life with something you truly enjoy.
Yep. I love it. So here's something that, talk to me about this, Tony. So generationally, this whole purpose, the topic of purpose, and really trying to merge how we make our life with what we believe in, I would say is fairly new to the younger generations. At least my age, growing up, you were just taught if you had a job, be thankful you had a job. If you had a retirement, be thankful you had a retirement, and you just did it. Whereas now we're starting to look for more of this purpose and alignment with work. But let me ask you this. What about people that are just sitting on the side turning down work because they don't think it matches their purpose?
What would I say to those people who are
they're coming right? They're coming to you and they're like, "Hey, I'm not working because I need something that totally aligns with my purpose in life, and I can't find the job that matches this purpose."
Right. Well, if you can't find it in the employment world, why can't you create it?
Sure.
And because, I mean, today's world is a lot different than 30, 40 years ago. Technology allows us, Jerrod, to get on a call with someone on the other side of the world and speak to them and their audience. We
That's
didn't have
right.
that 30 or 40 years ago.
No, you're right.
So it's opened up a world where you can work for yourself. Be clear about, before you do that, be clear about what it is you love to do, what problem you can solve, who you want to solve it for.
Oh, great tips right there. I love it. Say that again for me, Tony. What are those three things?
So be clear about what you love to do,
Yep.
what problem you can solve, and who specifically can you solve it for. And the fourth point around that is why you? And typically the answer to that is because you have been through that experience or that problem yourself and you've come out of it the other end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I can't be a great career coach if I struggled for 40 years in a job I hated and I couldn't navigate myself way through that, out of that dilemma.
Yep. Yeah. You need to experience.
You need to experience the problem and how painful dissatisfaction is. It's not a physical pain. It's almost like a pain in the heart that says, my heart's not in this. My heart doesn't want to do this.
Yes. Yeah. I love it, right? Because where do most people find that pain? When do you think, in your experience in life and all the literature we've read, when would most people experience that pain that they've lived a life that they didn't want to live?
When would they?
Yeah.
Okay, so I came across a story of a German man, and he's lying on his deathbed, Jerrod.
Yeah.
So let's all project us forward to our deathbed, because that time will come for all of us, and we're about to take our last breath. So this German gentleman said to his palliative care nurse, he said, because he knew that it was his last day, he goes, I'm experiencing two types of pain. The first pain was the physical pain of the illness that had inflicted his body. And then he goes, and then I'm also feeling a second pain, which he couldn't describe too well, but he goes, it's worse than the physical pain. And it was the pain of not living the life he felt he should have lived. So there was this unlived life pain inside his heart.
Yeah.
And that was the greater pain.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what I share with my clients. Okay, you have a fear about stepping out of this secure job that you have today to starting your own business, which deep down is your true wish. And I appreciate the fears about not earning an income or putting enough food on the table for your family. But how would that fear compared to the potential fear of being on your last day on this planet, and you look back on your life and you've got this big bag of unlived life?
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's exactly where I was going to say, is that's where you would find the majority of people that wish they would have made that change, and they'll realize it at their deathbed. Right?
Exactly. I was speaking to a friend of mine last week. He turned 70. And I said, now that you're 70, do you start thinking more and more of, your mortality, the day that will come? He goes, no, I don't fear that. He goes, I fear that there'll be so much my life that is unfulfilled.
Yeah.
The books I haven't written, the places I haven't seen, the difference that I didn't make.
Yeah. No, 100%. And there's a saying out there, and I can't remember who said it, but true hell is when you leave this world and you go to heaven or wherever you believe your spirit goes, and you see the person you could have been and you don't recognize them.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Because you didn't take chances. You didn't believe in you. You didn't try to align what it is you really want to do in life with the time you have.
Yeah, or another one around that similar is you wanted to write a book or create something, and then someone else creates it, and you just become the spectator watching what they did.
Yeah, there's that
so
too.
That's the other angle.
And see what I love, Tony, is you coach people through their work and their livelihood to purpose, but I think this applies across life, right? Once you start believing in yourself, you start looking for greater meaning in your time here, you can apply it to your relationships, to your hobbies, you're writing a book, your activities, because you're starting to align with who you're really meant to be and who you're going to become, which then creates energy to align all of your life, right? Your relationships. Again, I would almost guarantee, Tony, without having met one of your clients that followed your coaching program and switched careers or started their own business, that they wouldn't also tell you their personal life has improved greatly.
Absolutely, for sure. I mean, if you don't have a reason to live, you have a reason to die. A lot of our inspiration and joy comes from feeling productive and making a difference in other people's lives. If you're just sitting around, retire. I even tell my clients not to retire. If you want to leave the workforce, yes, but make sure there is something productive that you can step into that makes a difference.
Yeah.
On this planet. And it comes from a story I read a number of years ago of a gentleman by the name of Anthony. And Anthony lived in America, and he was a barber. And Jerrod, one day, a man walks into his barber shop and he looks at Anthony and says, "How old are you?" Because he looked like he should have retired 10 years earlier, because he looked like he was in his 70s. He goes, are you 70? And Anthony said, "No, I'm not 70. Are you 80? Anthony goes, no, I'm not 80. Well, then how old are you? And Anthony goes, I'm 108.
Oh, wow.
And you're still doing this? He goes, I love it. It's not work.
Yeah.
And that's what the average person doesn't understand, that when you truly enjoy doing something and you love it, it's not work that you need to take a vacation from or retire from. And that was another clue I needed, which I share with my clients. When you truly love what you do, it actually lengthens your life.
Yeah.
Because you've got a reason for being here. And when you read more into Anthony's story, and it's online, he wasn't just simply cutting someone's hair. He was building connections and relationships with these people. And he shared his story about how he cut a young boy's hair, and then that young boy becomes a father and a grandfather, and then he would cut the hair of the son and the grandson. So can you see how he had a connection to that person that he's cutting hair for, and their whole family, and how it changed through the years? He also, because he'd been cutting hair for so long, he'd seen all the different styles, and he would keep up to date with all the different trends, because he knew he wasn't just cutting hair. It was an important part of how they looked and the confidence it gave them to present themselves out in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you and I were talking off air, and you asked about my law enforcement career, and I don't know how much you follow Western or United States policing, but there's study after study out there that A law enforcement officer in the United States of America, if they work 30 years in a profession, will on average die 7 years earlier than an average citizen. 7 years earlier, which is
Right.
why I left when I did, to get out at 21 and get my 7 years back, because I'm not willing to give up 7 years on the end of my life. But I think you said something that was important in there, is that just because you retire or you walk away from one thing, you can't create this void to where you have to do nothing in your life. You need to still have something. If it's not the same job you had, you still have to have something that gives you purpose, something that gets you up out of bed, something that is meaningful and contributing, so you're not just sitting around.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember a friend of mine who was a school teacher telling me once a friend of his who was a teacher also in the same school had retired, and they caught up after 12 months or 18 months. And my friend said, because he just sat around, his mental sharpness had declined rapidly because he wasn't keeping mentally active and learning and growing. And that was another important message. And that's why one of the reasons I wrote a book for. I thought, if I can write a book, that will keep you mentally sharp. You've got to keep tabs on this chapter and how it feeds into the next chapter, and this paragraph aligns closely so it feels there's a smooth transition from one chapter to another in one paragraph. You're not going backwards mentally if you write a book.
Right. No, I think that's huge. Let's talk about your book, The Phoenix Career Principles. What sparked you to go wanting to publish a book and go from coaching to author to speaker, and the journey you're on now? What was probably the biggest obstacle you had to overcome to step out and do all this?
The biggest obstacle to writing a book is the discipline that it takes. It constantly lives with you. Even if you go for a walk or you're at a dinner engagement or something, you're constantly thinking about what's the next part of the book that you need to write, the next sentence, the next paragraph. And so it stays with you. And the other element, because I've got an editor, obviously, who helped me along that journey. And she said to me, she goes, if you ask 100 people how many of them want to write a book, almost all of them would say they want to write a book.
Yeah.
But only about 2 or 3% start. And then of the 2 or 3% that start, most will give up after the first chapter. Some will write the whole book, but won't press the publish button because they're worried about what people will think.
Sure.
They think they're going to be criticised or rejected, or the book's going to be trashed.
Yeah.
So I was determined to put out a quality book and go all the way, because if I'm going to be a coach and be entrepreneurial, you've got to go through the whole cycle. You've got to write it. You've got to be able to take the editing feedback that comes back. If your editor says, Tony, you need to rewrite this because it's not good enough, then you've got to go through that. You don't lose confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
And my main motivation that helped me write the book from start to end was taking the attention off me to putting it on the reader and thinking, this is a message that I need to put out in the world.
Yeah.
Your career needs to serve a valuable purpose. It helps you to grow and evolve and make a difference to other people's lives.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's funny you shared that story, because I can't even lie. When I went through the same thing, I wrote the book, I had an editor, and I still felt fear right before I sent it off for the final publishing of exactly what you said. Like, oh my God, as soon as I send this, there is no getting this back.
Jerrod, the book will touch someone's life, whoever's meant to be touched by that book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
If it changes one person's life, it's worth it.
For sure. And I think that's a great message for everybody out there is your story is valuable, and your story is, there's somebody out there waiting for your story, and unfortunately they may not get it if you're not willing to share it.
Exactly. It might not be your own story, but a story you share within the book.
Yeah.
So in the Phoenix book, I share a story in there which, when I put it down on paper, I didn't realize how impactful it was until people who had read my book came back to me and said, that story really, really has sunk in. And it was a story of a gentleman I worked in the same office with, and he was doing accounting work which he didn't enjoy. And on his desk, another colleague pointed this out to me because they thought it was a bit of a laugh. On his desk, this gentleman by the name of Steve kept a counter, and each night when he was about to leave, he would pack up his suitcase and he would tick off a number off this counter, and that number was the number of days to his retirement. Okay, so it was essentially his retirement clock, or as someone else said, a death clock. Each day he put up with, because he was counting down the days till he got out of there.
Yeah.
And people have read that story thinking, I don't want to be that person who is counting down their days. I want to be the person who makes my day count.
Yeah.
So that simple story, which I didn't realize when I wrote it, from my own journey, that it was going to be so significant in terms of shaping someone's thinking about their career and their life. You don't know. You do not know what you write and how someone else is going to receive it and how it will touch their life.
Sure.
You can't always preempt that, Jerrod.
No, you can't, because you can't predict who the reader is going to be and when they're going to find it, and what stage of their life they'll find it. And what's the biggest thing you learned about yourself, Tony, in writing that book?
I guess I learned about that I did have the discipline and the patience and the perseverance to go from start to finish.
Yeah, those are great.
Because as I said, a lot of people don't make it through the whole process. And, so as the story I shared earlier, go take yourself to your own bed in the last day. How will you feel looking back, knowing you had a book deep down inside you and it never came out?
Yeah. Or you had a patent or a new invention or an app or a piece of technology that the world could have used that nobody will know about because you let it die with you.
Exactly. You would have heard the quote, a lot of people die with the music still inside them.
Yes. Great quote. Yeah.
So it doesn't need to be a song. It's your music. It's whatever that gift is. That
sure.
Talent. I'm also inspired by the biblical passage, Jerrod, that says, "Don't hide your light under a bushel."
Yep. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, and that's your music. That's your gift. That's your creativity.
Yeah.
And that gentleman who was counting down that counter each day was essentially hiding his light under a bushel.
Yeah. Fantastic. Tony, where can our audience connect with you further? Where can they find the book?
Yes, so they can find the book on Amazon. It's called The Phoenix Career Principles. And also, if they want to learn more about my work, they can go to my website, tonypisanelli.com. I'm not sure whether you'll have a tag underneath this.
Yeah, we'll put all that in the show notes.
And you can learn more about my work about transforming a career that is simply about earning an income or about status and power and your own sort of recognition, to actually going to the next level where you're actually making a difference in the world. And it's an expression of who you are, and it really inspires your heart and gives you a sense of joy.
I love it. Tony, I love the work you're doing. I want to applaud you for stepping into that area to help people merge their livelihoods and purpose and ultimately create fulfilling lives that on their deathbed they look back and smile and say, man, I got my money's worth out of this ride. So I appreciate you doing that. I appreciate you taking time to join us this week on the On Purpose podcast. And Tony, we appreciate you, my friend.
A pleasure. Thank you. It's been my pleasure to be on and share the story as well. Thank you.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.